I used to think life was pretty simple. Work hard, find someone you love, and build a life together. That was my mindset when I met Michael. Michael was charming, had a great job, and seemed to have everything figured out. We clicked right away, and before long we were married. He was the kind of person who always had a plan. The wedding, the house, our future. It was like he had it all mapped out. I got swept up in it, feeling like I'd hit the jackpot. "Susan, love, you don't need to work anymore," Michael told me right after our honeymoon. "I've got us covered. You can focus on the house, and soon we'll start our family. Won't that be wonderful?" It sounded nice at the time. No more waking up early for the daily grind. No more dealing with office politics, just a peaceful life at home, taking care of the man I loved and our future kids. So I agreed. I quit my job at the trading company, a job I actually loved, to become a full-time housewife. But as days turned into months and months into years, the picture Michael painted started to show its true colors. "Susan, is it really that hard to keep the house tidy?" Michael's voice would boom as he walked through the door, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. "And dinner? I hope it's something decent today. I'm tired of the same old stuff." I tried. God knows I tried. I kept the house spotless, learned new recipes, did everything I could to be the wife Michael wanted. But it was never enough. "No thank you, no, it's delicious," or "you've outdone yourself." Nothing. It was like living with a ticking time bomb, never knowing what would set him off. The worst part was the silence. The absence of the pitter-patter of little feet, the laughter of a child, our child. It was a void, a constant reminder of what Michael considered my biggest failure. 3 years, Susan. 3 years and not even a sign of a baby. Do you know how embarrassing that is for me? Everyone at work is asking, and what do I say? That my wife can't do the one thing she's supposed to? His words cut deeper than any knife. It wasn't like we hadn't tried. Doctor's appointments, tests, the works, but nothing. And instead of support, I got blame. As if it was my fault. As if I wanted this emptiness inside me, this feeling of being less than a woman. And then there were the gatherings. Michael loved showing off our home to his colleagues, loved playing the big man in front of his friends. And I was reduced to a server, invisible yet scrutinized, bringing in drinks and food, trying to be the perfect hostess while my insides twisted with every laugh, every shared look between Michael and her, Sarah, his star colleague. "Susan, make sure you don't embarrass me tonight, and keep an eye on Sarah. She likes her drinks a certain way," Michael would say, his eyes never meeting mine, always fixed on something or someone far more important. It was a life, sure, but it was a life unraveling thread by thread, until I felt like I was nothing more than a shadow in my own home. A ghost of the woman I once was. The days began to blur, each one a mirror of the last. Wake up, clean, cook, try to dodge Michael's sharp comments, then sleep and repeat. It was like living in a loop, a never-ending cycle of chores and criticisms. The house that was supposed to be a home felt more like a prison, and I its unwilling inmate. "Susan, are you even listening?" Michael's voice snapped me out of my thoughts one evening. I looked up to see him glaring at me, a crease of annoyance on his forehead. "I said the Hendersons are coming over for dinner tomorrow. Make sure everything is perfect. I won't have you embarrassing me in front of my boss." I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Michael, I'll take care of it." It was always about keeping up appearances, making sure everyone else saw the perfect picture, even if the frame was cracking at the edges. The next day was a flurry of activity: cleaning, polishing, cooking. The house had to be spotless, the food nothing short of exquisite. It was exhausting, but I had learned long ago that it was better to just do it than to face Michael's wrath. The Hendersons arrived, all smiles and pleasantries. I played the part, the dutiful wife, serving and smiling. But inside, I was screaming. Screaming for a way out, for a moment of peace, for a life that felt like mine. After they left, Michael was in high spirits, the evening a success in his eyes. "See, Susan, when you actually try, things go well. Heat this up, and maybe there won't be as much to complain about." His words stung, but I bit back the tears. Crying never helped. It only made things worse. So I cleaned up, washing the dishes as the weight of Michael's expectations and my own helplessness settled on my shoulders like a lead cloak. The next morning, I woke up feeling off. My head was spinning and my stomach churned. I brushed it off, thinking it was just exhaustion or maybe something I ate. But when it happened again the next day, and the day after, I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Michael, I think I need to see a doctor," I said one morning, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been feeling really sick lately, and it's not getting better." He barely looked up from his phone. "What now, Susan? Can't you handle a simple stomach bug?" "Fine, go see a doctor if you must, but make sure it's quick. You know we have plans this weekend." The doctor's appointment was a blur. Tests were run, questions asked, and then the wait. The wait that felt like an eternity. And then the news I never expected. The news that changed everything. "Congratulations, Mrs. Taylor. You're pregnant," the doctor said, her smile warm and genuine. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, a beacon of hope in the fog of my life. I was going to be a mother. A mix of joy and fear washed over me. Joy for the life growing inside me, and fear for how Michael would react. I rushed home, the news burning a hole in my pocket. "Michael," I said, bursting through the door, my heart racing. "I have something to tell you. We're going to have a baby." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "A baby, huh?" he said, his voice flat. "Well, don't expect this to change anything, Susan. Pregnant or not, you still have your responsibilities here." His words hit me like a bucket of cold water. This was supposed to be a moment of happiness, of shared dreams coming true. Instead, it was just another cold reminder of the life I was trapped in. With the pregnancy confirmed, life took on a strange new rhythm. My body was changing, reacting in ways I had never anticipated. Morning sickness became my constant, unwelcome companion, making the already tough days feel endless. "Susan, what's wrong with you these days? You're moving like a snail," Michael barked one evening as I struggled to keep up with the household chores, my body heavy and my mind foggy from exhaustion. "I'm just tired, Michael. The doctor said it's normal during the first trimester," I replied, trying to mask the nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. "Normal? There's nothing normal about slacking off. You wanted this baby, now deal with it." "But don't let this house turn into a mess," he retorted, his voice void of understanding or empathy. The harshness in his words stung, but it was nothing new. I had learned to swallow the pain, to keep my head down and carry on. But inside, a fierce protective instinct was growing. This baby, my baby, was depending on me, and I wouldn't let Michael's coldness dim the light of hope that was slowly, tentatively beginning to grow within me. One evening, as I was setting the table for one of Michael's dinner parties, the room started spinning. The clatter of the plates and the murmur of conversation faded into a distant hum as everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the couch, Michael standing over me, his expression a mix of annoyance and concern. "What the hell, Susan? You're making a scene in front of my guests. Get up and get yourself together," he hissed, his words laced with embarrassment rather than worry. I think I fainted," I muttered, my voice weak, my body trembling. "Fainted? Don't be dramatic. Just get up and finish dinner, and try not to embarrass me any further," he snapped, turning away to rejoin his colleagues as if nothing had happened. The following day, after another round of nausea and dizziness, I knew I couldn't ignore my body's signals any longer. "Michael, I need to see the doctor again. Something's not right," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "Again? What now, Susan? You're pregnant, not incapacitated. Handle it," he replied, barely looking up from his phone. But this time I didn't back down. "No, Michael, I'm going. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about our baby, and I won't take any risks," I said, the protective fire within me burning brighter, stronger. The doctor's visit confirmed my fears. "You need to rest, Mrs. Taylor. Your body is telling you it's time to slow down. The stress and physical strain could be dangerous for you and the baby," the doctor warned, her words echoing my own thoughts. Armed with the doctor's advice, I returned home, ready to confront Michael, ready to fight for the well-being of our child. "Michael, we need to talk. The doctor said I need to rest more." The stress and the work around the house could be dangerous for the baby, I said, my resolve unwavering. Rest? Who's going to take care of everything then, Susan? You expect me to start doing your job now? He scoffed, his tone dismissive, his eyes cold. No, I don't expect you to do anything. But I won't risk our baby's health. I won't. I need to go to my parents, I replied, the words pouring out, fueled by newfound strength and the fierce love for the tiny life growing inside me. The conversation was far from easy, the resistance from Michael palpable. But the faint hope that had started this journey was no longer faint. This baby, my baby, was going to have a chance at a life filled with love and warmth, no matter what it took. The days at my parents' place were like a balm to my bruised soul. Away from Michael's cold glares and constant criticisms, I started to breathe a little easier, to feel a bit more like the Susan I used to be before my life became a series of chores and reprimands. But peace has a way of being fragile, especially when you're carrying around a secret as big as mine. I was 8 months pregnant, my belly a constant reminder of the life I left behind and the life that was growing inside me. And then that one call shattered the fragile peace I've been clinging to. Susan, you've got to hear this, my friend Lisa's voice was urgent, a low whisper on the other end of the line. I saw Michael yesterday, and guess what? He wasn't alone. That woman from his office, Sarah, it's like they're a couple, Susan. My heart sank, a cold dread settling in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't just the betrayal, the blatant disrespect. It was the realization that the man I had married, the man I had built a life with, saw me as nothing more than a convenience, easily discarded, easily replaced. Are you sure, Lisa? It's Michael, my Michael, I managed to say, my voice a mere whisper, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Susan, I wouldn't tell you this if I wasn't 100% sure. I'm so sorry, girl, but you deserve better. You and your baby, Lisa's voice was firm, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. I hung up, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, anger, hurt, disbelief, but more than anything, a fierce determination to not let this be the end of my story. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said later that day, my parents sitting across from me in the living room, worry etching their faces at the seriousness in my voice. What's wrong, honey? My mom asked, her eyes searching mine, looking for a clue, a hint of what was tearing me apart inside. It's Michael, he's been seeing someone else. Someone from his office, I said, the words coming out in a rush, the truth laying bare the wound that was still fresh, still bleeding. My dad's face turned a shade darker, his jaw setting in that way it always did when he was about to lay down the law. That scumbag, I knew he wasn't good enough for you. What are you going to do, Susan? I want to fight back. I want to make sure he doesn't just walk away from us like it's nothing. I want to make sure he knows he can't just toss us aside. I said the words fueled by a mixture of hurt and newfound strength. And so the plan was set in motion. My dad's friend, a former cop turned private investigator, was our best shot at getting the evidence we needed. Evidence that would show the world, show Michael that I wasn't just a forgotten wife, a discarded piece of his past. Susan, I'll take care of it. You just focus on yourself and the baby. We'll make sure this guy gets what's coming to him, the investigator, a grizzled man with eyes that had seen too much, assured me. Weeks rolled by, each one stretching longer than the last. The house, usually filled with tension, was now brimming with a silent storm, the kind that threatens to shatter everything in its wake. The private detective had done his job well, too well. The evidence he handed over was damning. Photos and videos that left no room for doubt. Michael's infidelity was laid bare, each image a stab in my heart. And Sarah, his colleague, the woman I had reluctantly hosted at my husband's request, was at the center of it all. Can't believe this, can you, Susan? My mom muttered as we sifted through the evidence one evening. Her face was a mix of anger and sympathy, her hand squeezing mine in a silent show of support. You going to let him get away with this after everything? I wiped my eyes, the reality of my situation settling like lead in my stomach. No, I can't. But it's not just me anymore. It's her too, I said, my hand instinctively resting on my swollen belly. The baby, my little girl, was due any day now, and she was all that mattered. The birth was a whirlwind, a mix of pain, fear, and overwhelming love. When they placed her in my arms, her tiny fingers curling around mine, the world faded away. She was perfect, a tiny beacon of hope in the storm that was my life. Back at my parents' house, the atmosphere was a mix of joy and worry. My parents doted on their granddaughter, their happiness tinged with concern for the future. "Susan, she's beautiful." "She's got your strength, I can tell," my mom said softly, her eyes meeting mine with an understanding that went beyond words. I smiled, the weight of the past weeks easing a bit in her presence. "Thanks, Mom. She's what's keeping me going." My dad, ever the protective figure, glanced at the file that had been burning a hole in my mind. "What's the plan, Susan? You ready to face the storm head-on?" I looked at my daughter, her presence a silent reminder of the strength I had to muster for her. "I'll face anything." The air in my parents' home, usually thick with the scent of Mom's cooking and Dad's aftershave, had shifted. It was just days after my life had changed forever, bringing my daughter into the world. Her arrival was a slice of heaven in the turmoil that had become my life. Then, like a cold gust on a winter morning, Michael stormed in. His entrance was as subtle as a thunderclap, his eyes darting around, lightly ignoring the tiny miracle in my arms. "Susan, this circus has gone on long enough," Michael began, his voice sharp, cutting the air. "I didn't marry a woman to have her lounge at her parents' place. It's time you returned and did what you're meant to do. I'm not bleeding money for a cleaner and a cook when I have you." I tightened my grip on my daughter, her innocence a stark contrast to the bitterness in front of me. "Michael, you're living in a fantasy if you think I'm stepping back into that house, back into that life. It's not happening." His laugh was cruel, devoid of humor. "Oh, really? And how do you plan on surviving, Susan? If you think I'm going to let you walk away with half of what's mine, you're sorely mistaken. I'll divorce you and make sure you don't get a dime." The audacity of his threat was almost laughable, almost. I couldn't help but let out a chuckle, not of mirth but of disbelief. "Michael, you're the one who's mistaken. You seem to forget I know all about your little affair with Sarah. I'm the one filing for divorce, and with the evidence I have, let's just say you won't be the one calling the shots." His face drained of color, the arrogance melting into panic. "You're bluffing, Susan. You have nothing on me." That's when I decided it was time to lay my cards on the table. I pulled out the photos, the undeniable proof of his deceit. "Does this look like a bluff to you, Michael?" He lunged, desperation fueling his movements, but he was no match for my dad. Though years had passed since his days on the force, Dad's authority and strength hadn't waned a bit. He stepped between us, his presence alone enough to stop Michael in his tracks. "Michael, I think you've overstayed your welcome. Leave my house and don't you dare come back threatening my daughter." Dad's voice was calm, but the underlying warning was clear as day. Fear flickered in Michael's eyes, a fear that confirmed he knew better than to argue. He backed away, his retreat as graceless as his entrance. The door shut behind him with a thud that seemed to echo my heartbeat. Silence enveloped the room for a moment, the tension slowly dissolving. I looked down at my daughter, her serene face oblivious to the storm that had just passed. She was my beacon, my reason to stand tall against the chaos. Weeks turned into a blur, a mix of sleepless nights and endless paperwork. My lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, was a no-nonsense guy, his office always smelling like strong coffee and determination. We were gearing up for a legal battle, and the air was thick with anticipation. "Susan, we're in for a rough ride. You sure you're up for this?" Mr. Jenkins asked as we sat in his office, papers spread out like a map of the battlefield ahead. I held my daughter close, feeling her steady breaths. "I've never been surer of anything, Mr. Jenkins. It's not just for me, it's for her too." The day we filed the lawsuit felt like stepping into a storm. The papers, heavy with the weight of my broken marriage, were now in the hands of the court. Mr. Jenkins was a force to be reckoned with, his every word in the courtroom sharp and precise. Then came the day of reckoning. The courtroom was imposing, its walls echoing the sound of justice. Michael was there, his face a mask, his lawyer whispering last-minute strategies. "Susan, you don't have to do this. We can work it out," Michael hissed as I passed him, a last-ditch attempt to sway me. I met his gaze, feeling nothing but the fire of resolve burning within me. "Work it out? That ship has sailed, Michael. See you in court." The hearing was intense, every word, every piece of evidence a nail in the coffin of Michael's lies. Mr. Jenkins presented the photos, the videos, the undeniable truth of Michael's betrayal. Michael's lawyer tried to defend, to deflect, but the evidence was too strong, the betrayal too blatant. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was the sound of finality. "In light of the evidence presented, I rule in favor of Mrs. Susan Taylor. Divorce granted, full custody awarded, and Mr. Taylor, you are to pay $150,000 in compensation and $1,500 in alimony monthly." The gavel's bang was like a thunderclap, sealing Michael's fate, marking the end of a battle hard fought. But the storm wasn't over yet. The ripples of our legal battle spread, reaching the place where it all started, Michael's office. His superiors didn't take kindly to the scandal, the affair that had spilled into the public eye. Michael was demoted, the golden boy image he had cultivated shattered by his own actions. And Sarah, the other half of the deceit, found herself out of a job, her involvement with a married man staining her reputation beyond repair. The dawn of a new day never felt so real, so vivid. The courtroom battles were behind us, the storm had passed, and the world seemed to be opening up with possibilities. My daughter, now a constant source of joy and strength, was growing fast, her giggles filling the house that once echoed with arguments and despair. One morning, as the sun spilled its golden light through the windows, Mom walked into the kitchen, her smile as warm as the coffee she poured. "You know, Susan, seeing you and this little munchkin makes all the worries fade away. You've done well, really well." I looked up from feeding my daughter, her tiny hands grabbing at the spoon. "Thanks, Mom. It's been tough, but she makes it all worth it." Dad came in, his presence always so reassuring. "Susan, you've shown what real strength is. And this little one," he said, gently tickling my daughter's chin, "she's got a great mom." The days were no longer a countdown to another argument or a court date. They were filled with laughter, baby talk, and plans for the future. I had gone back to work, my old job at the trading company welcoming me back with open arms. Balancing motherhood and a career wasn't easy, but it felt right, like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led me to a new dawn, a fresh start. As I glanced at the photos of my daughter, surrounded by a home filled with love and support, I knew this was just the beginning. A new chapter, not only for me but for my little girl. A chapter where the skies were clear and the possibilities were endless. The dawn had broken, bringing with it a world of hope and promise. The storm was behind us, and ahead lay the warm glow of a new day.